Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of About Time. It's me, Chris Nichols, and as you know, this is a series where I have the great joy of chatting with people who've been part of my life over the last 25 or so years, people who've inspired me, influenced me, and where they do work that I would just love the world to know more about. And one of those people is Andres Roberts, and I am just so delighted, Andres, that you're here today.
Chris, it's so lovely to join you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Now, you're really welcome. So, I'm asking this same question to just about everybody because everybody who comes on this does so many things. Um, you do loads of good things. How do you introduce yourself these days?
It's a good one, isn't it? I mean, it does change. I found myself in a circle of people just 2 days ago saying, I think what I do is explore how nature does good things for us so that we can do good things for nature. And it comes from, well, you know this better than anyone, it comes from a long inquiry really into how we seem to have built a world that takes away a lot from systems that we're part of, in which we're not necessarily happy or our best selves. And the more that I've done my work in the world, the more it's gone into what does it take to understand how to be well and whole as an individual in order to support a whole and well world that supports whole and well individuals and so on.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. So, what does that work actually look like then? I mean, because I know you run you're involved, you pioneered the whole chunks of work around bio leadership, and you run a fellowship and you run programs. I mean, so what? Yeah, help me to make sense of what you do so that people who don't know it can, yeah, can
Yeah.
follow.
Well,
Yeah.
in the most practical way, the current form of work, that the platform really that I use to use my work, is something we set up called the Bio Leadership Project. And the Bio Leadership Project takes the premise that, okay, there's a dominant form of leadership and progress in the world, but we need new forms of leadership and progress in the world. We have a consultancy, and we work with organizations that courageously, ambitiously, necessarily want to try to put living principles and the principles of living systems into their work. So I, for example, work with Patagonia here in Europe. I helped to design something called the Patagonia Earth University, which is an internal learning and connecting program, really. Outside of that, we have, it's a very real joy to me that in the pandemic, we launched something called the BioLeadership Fellowship. That's a fellowship of people around the world. It's now global. We have 50 nationalities in it. And that's people who somehow want to work with nature or place nature at the center of a shift or a change that they're working on. It may be a business. We've got fellows in education. We've got fellows living in conflict zones. We've got food growers in the system. But everybody somehow is asking a question related to, we can do things better by working with nature, and more than in a romanticized way, more than in a way that says going out for a team away day is good, but genuinely working with questions of what are the principles that sustain life and how can I put them into the DNA of my organization, but also culturally, how can I work with the idea that I am nature, that we are nature, and so on. So we've got a consultancy, we've got a fellowship, and emerging from that, because the design of it all is really to be a mycelium, to be a human mycelium, we're starting to see the emergence of new innovations. So a couple of years ago, from that, and in relationship with the Environmental Funders Network here in the UK, we helped to set up something called the Earth Funding Lab. And that is a mycelially inspired way of saying, can we create a community of funders who collaborate more effectively to support shifts towards economies that serve life? So, yeah, and different kinds of innovation are emerging from
So,
all of that.
so that's brilliant. So that was consultancy, fellowship, funding. Yeah, there's a lot of brilliant stuff. I mean, how did it start? I mean, well, I've got loads of questions, right? So, how did that start? How long has it been going?
Um, well, again, I mean, you know the roots of this because we know each other from when we were at Ashridge together. You teaching the program and me a participant. I think that was in 2010, 2011. I now see better that I've always had questions around how we see whole systems. Like
Yeah.
I've got tell me if you want the 3 word answer. um,
No, this is a chance for as expansive a chat. I want people to know you and know your work. So
okay,
it
yeah,
can be as expansive as you want. Yeah.
okay, yeah. Just thinking I could have just said consultancy and fellowship, couldn't I? But yeah, I'm only half joking, or I'm joking. Where did it start from? So yeah, I realize better now that I think I've always had questions about how we see the whole together.
Mm.
And I remember now moments when I was a boy and um, I could notice whether adults were really listening to each other or not. Like I have a memory of that, which came to me, in a conversation like this a few years ago. Of like, do we actually really see the whole? Do we actually really sort of understand each other? I think I've always had that. I I started my first project when I was in my mid-20s. Actually, I sort of left the world
Wow.
of paid work and set something up that was about playfulness and creating situations where people could play, not a million miles away from Game Shift. Um, and we did a lot with schools, we did a lot with councils, we did a lot with very hedonistic festivals. Actually, just how do we create situations in which you can step away from everyday life and just play and participate? So I've always had questions around what makes us come alive, what um, what makes us feel whole, and I'd always had a good like a social intention. How do we do it towards positive ends?
Mm.
Then I think something called me to do the masters where we connected, and I thought I was signing up to a. I don't know, as you know, people didn't know what they were signing up for when they joined that program. Was it a CSR thing? Was it a sort of a green MBA? But for
Mm.
me, as it was for other people, from the very beginning, it became about worldview, and it became about exploring the notion that the world we've built has come from a worldview of disconnection and a place of separateness to nature and potentially separateness to each other and even to parts of ourselves. And so, and by good fortune, a mutual friend of ours, Corby Hort, was
Mm.
guiding in Spain, and he said, "Hey, should we start guiding people in Spain?" Because I was running learning programs, and he's an amazing, guide.
Yeah.
And we would put people to sit alone in nature for a while, and I would see that, wow, when we take the time to stop and be in nature alone without the busyness of everyday life, amazingly transformative things happen. And that was just the beginning, really, of this journey into, wow, what is it to connect fully with ourselves, connect with nature,
Yeah.
and then bring that knowledge into our everyday lives, whether it's a business or a community or how we look after ourselves.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you for mentioning the MSc. I mean, that reminds me that I must do one of these episodes just about the MSc program because I haven't done that yet. But
Mm,
it keeps popping up in different conversations because either people have done it or they've connected to it in some way.
right.
And I think it was a pioneering thing. And Peter Reason, who's one of the founders of it originally, is going to come on an episode later on.
Oh, that's great.
Um,
That's great.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I loved how you described it as, when you came on it, you didn't know if it was a green MBA or, finishing school or goodness knows what else. And I think people made of it what they did, and the community was always brilliant. And of course, we spent time at Schumacher College together and all kinds of things. Um, but what? sticks with me about your participation was like, I still remember reading your first paper you wrote, which was about circles, beautiful work and circles,
Mm.
from memory. Yeah.
Mm.
And I also remember that you and people like Jonathan Wise took the work extraordinarily seriously, and that you didn't do this half-hearted as a head thing. You
Mm.
went off and did the most visceral exploring, from living on the learning boat to nature quests, and later on with, I can't remember your teacher you went into the wild with in North America, I
Oh,
think, but
that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, John Milton. Yeah, John P. Milton. Yeah,
John Mill. Mm, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it
Tell me
was. I mean,
about.
it was.
I was
Yeah,
going to
you
say,
go,
yeah.
Chris.
I think you're probably going to do it anyway, but tell me about some of that work with John Milton, for example, because I don't know much about that. I just know
Right.
that you
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to bridge a little with what you were saying, I think the masters, that community or this realm of work, is an invitation to explore the world with all of our senses, isn't it? And I really took to that. And interestingly, I was also in a moment in life where I found space to do that, and that space came from a breakup, and that's sort of like, I look back at that real gift of opportunity, really. And then, yeah, I suppose coming back to that root, the root of that question around worldview and the idea of working with experience, I jumped at that, and what was I? I was in my early 30s, and I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have a mortgage, and so on and so on. And I was able to go into the wild, and again, Corby obviously was a huge inspiration, as he has been to many people, in and around that masters in our field. We had an amazing time guiding programs together, and then I found myself on this path of meeting elders, teachers who were working with this notion of, they wouldn't use that term, but I could frame it around like, wow, worldview, and different obviously cultures come into play, whether it's Buddhism or Taoism or indigenous worldviews. But I was able to go into it in a way where I could feel it as much as think about it. Coming back to your question, and I mean, John Milton, if people haven't come across him, he's now in his 80s, but he's based in Colorado. In his teens, he was already guiding people to spend time alone in nature, and in that practice of preparing, like quietening the mind, coming back to the body, coming back to the energetic self, letting go of the busyness of everyday life, including our sort of chatter, then going out into nature where we mark a circle. So you stay still and you step into that circle, and it may be for 7 days, or sometimes shorter or sometimes more. A traditional vision quest and indigenous vision quest for a lot of peoples would be 4 days, of course. And again, like when I've seen people do that, it's in a way it's so simple, but it's just so beautiful in how it reveals truths, and it grounds us, and it puts things into perspective, and so on and so on. And I think the other things that I was doing then was, of course, just understanding these different principles. Like just this week I was in a session on Taoism, and the notion of, when do we push, when do we pull, when do we make room, what different forms of force to apply. Nobody ever taught me stuff like that when I was a boy. It's just nowhere near conventional Western education. Is it coming from the inside? Is it coming from the outside? Is it strong? Is it soft? Like, none of that in the context of force is in our habits as we sort of grow up, or educational habits anyway. So all of that was happening, really, but also, I got to spend a little time with Joanna Macy, who is, I'd like to sort of just say that as we speak, she's in her last moments of life, so it's lovely to honor her. And I got to spend some time with not loads of time, but Thich Nhat Hanh when he was still around, and you start to understand that these people have a knowledge which is in the body, and it's in a form of kindness and compassion. It's not just a thought, and so it's all about gathering or cultivating a knowledge it has many forms of knowledge in it, right? I'm very lucky I got to practice a little of that.
Mm. Yeah. And I didn't know that you'd been to spend time with Joanna Macy, but we had Helen Schroeder earlier on this series, and Helen trained with Joanna and then taught with Joanna for a while, and also um, lived at Plum Village for a while. So there's a
Wow.
huge connection to your work there. Hmm. One of the great joys of doing this is seeing the connections between the episodes, and there are many, many rich connections, and it's just delightful. Hmm.
Mm, Oh,
Yeah,
it's really lovely. I mean, I should say I didn't do very much with Joanna Macy, but a little time with her where you could see how kind her eyes were. It
yeah,
was pretty influential. Yeah,
yes. She's, I mean, touched the lives of thousands of people. And although I've
yeah,
never worked with her, I feel that her practice has influenced my practice because of the people I work with who trained with her. It's massively interconnected as a web of
yeah,
a web of
yeah,
practice. Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm.
and I mean, I think one thing I appreciate is the frames, actually, the positionings that she kind of offer to the world. Like, the world as love, a world as self, which is the title of the book. That whole model is the world back to worldview. Is it? Do you see the world as a battlefield? Do you see the world as a trap that you somehow have to transcend? Do you see the world as a lover, or do you see the world as self? Like, just very simple. And how many words was that? 25 words, maybe. It, it's both accessible and incredibly profound, and I really appreciate how she's been able to bridge things like that. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
amazing people.
Yeah. And I know that you, just before we came on here, you said you're about to go to Norway and hope to visit um, the place where it's a shack, isn't it, in the mountain where Arne Naess used to be. I mean, what's the
That's
connection?
right.
Tell me a bit about the connection there. What's inspiring you to go there?
Oh, it's a good, yeah, it's a nice one. I mean, that probably speaks more to where I may be going next, actually, than
Ah,
references of what I've worked, in the sense that I've looked a little bit at Arne Naess's work and the notion of deep ecology, and
hmm
um, we. I'm really glad with where the Bioleadership Project is now. We having sort of spoken a little bit about where the roots of my work have been, and then saying, we started this fellowship in the pandemic, so we're now in a fifth cohort. It's a community of people internationally all working with nature. Many of them are now collaborating, in different ways. We're now forming new forms of innovation. A cooperative of businesses is being formed to try to sort of progress earth-centered leadership, earth-centered forms of innovation in different ways. And of course, for me, that puts me in a position of, well, where should I stand in that system now, and where can I be most helpful towards the work that we do as the Bioleadership Project, but also towards things that I feel like maybe I can go into to be useful, or have
yeah,
some form of
yeah,
impact. And we all have to judge where we put our energy, of course. And I think there's something that's calling me, which is around depth. You know, when we face such complex challenges in the world, and there's so much sort of shadow and difficulty, then I feel like what may come next for me is maybe still as part of the galaxy of what we're doing with the Bioleadership Project. It is a
hmm
space for deep work, and
hmm
just coming back to an Arne Naess thing of, you ask deep questions, create deep experiences that leads to deep commitment. there's something in that for me, and there's something in it around, and how to do it with playfulness, how to do it with joy, how to do it with art, but
Yeah,
just make really rich, beautiful experiences that go into the hard stuff, and also working with nature. So that's what I'll be holding a little when I kind of walk up to his cabin, which I
brilliant.
really have to do now that we've spoken about it on this podcast. So
Yeah,
thank you for
thank you.
that.
Yes, and I remember Stephen Harding, bless him, talking about going to Arne Naess's cabin, and it
Right.
wasn't a trivial enterprise. It's a long walk and a tough climb to get there. So it's a commitment, deep commitment to
Yes.
get there to
Yes.
do the work. Yeah,
Yeah. It is walking a talk of sort of, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it was
Yeah.
Stefan who told me the boxing story as well, by the way. So
Was it?
so when Arne Naess said, "Oh, we can talk ecology, but first we must box." So
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have
yeah,
to sort of honor that in some kind of a way. Yeah. That's
shadow
brilliant.
boxing. Shadow boxing is required.
Yes, I'll take a picture up there somewhere and send it to you, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course, I mean, I guess you've been influenced by Stefan as well, who's another person I would, love to have had on this series, but sadly, no longer with us. But I think almost every episode, in one way or another, honours Stefan, Brian Goodwin, Chris Seeley, so many people who
Mm.
we've worked with who are woven in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely extraordinary people. I mean, yeah, my as soon as you mentioned
Yeah.
Stefan, my eyes sort of filled up really there. I saw
Yeah.
Satish Kumar actually yesterday, just in passing, and I've never done a
Oh
lot with
wow.
Satish Kumar, but I did say to him, hey, you've been on my thoughts with Stefan's passing, and that was a nice moment. And yeah, I don't know who holds that knowledge and who can tell stories like Stefan at the moment. I don't know how we sort of keep we the people doing it, of course, but just the way that he did it felt so remarkable, and the knowledge that he held and the way that he was able to sort of weave it into a
Yeah.
conversation. And there
Yeah.
was the
I tell you what, Andres, I loved how you said around your deep work and holding it with playfulness. I mean, Stefan
right,
was absolute master, and it changed over the years.
huh?
He wasn't that when I first met him. He was deep, but not playful. And
Oh,
he
interesting.
grew as he grew older and wiser. He grew more and more playful. So he'd
Wow.
talk about chemistry as fairy tales while playing his Spanish guitar. It just beautifully, beautifully done, and he touched so many lives. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Oh, that's really lovely to hear that, Chris. What a joy to have sort of seen him evolve like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He had the South American thing as well, didn't he? Which is something we shared. So that's nice to think about.
Just like you, yes. He lived
Yeah,
there. He was a Spanish speaker, I think, as well, and all kinds of things. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Amazing for you, Chris. You've spent so much time with these people directly.
yeah. And not as much as I would have liked, but it's been a privilege to do any. I always find I'm so lucky to have had that chance. Here I am,
Mm,
first generation of my family not to be down a coal mine in Barnsley. So yeah,
mm.
how I get to spend time with Satish or Stefan and Chris Seeley, of course, was just a blast to work with Chris for 10 years was just brilliant.
Yeah. Can I ask you, do you see their work sort of evolving in other ways through other people? Or do you sort of see it as pieces that continue, or does it feel different, generationally?
Well, I mean, there's part of me that goes, well, I first started out working in sustainability jobs by accident 43 years ago. My my first job in the civil service, just because they put me there, was energy conservation. You know, I mean, they could
Right.
just as easily have put me in charge of oil fields or something, but they didn't. They put me in
Wow.
draft proofing and insulation. You know, and one of the great frustrations, by the way, of my life has been been no progress on that in 43 years. we could largely have made the UK net zero by now if we just bloody insulated things and given people proper houses to live in. You know. So I could be deeply despondent about the lack of progress and how over 40 years, my God, things have got much worse. And at the same time, I've seen this work, spill into companies, into non-profits, into John
Right.
Alexander's citizens' work, into your work, in Dickinson's, CDP.
Mm,
It's in so many things, in 1,000 different ways, and it's been a
mm,
a pleasure and a privilege just to play my little part in stewarding that for a few years and teaching a bit
mm.
at Schumacher. And yeah, you know, I've just what a gift to have been able to join in.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah,
Well, join in and support people in such great ways, and I mean, there's something that resonates in what you're saying from the fellowship because 200 people have gone through the bio leadership fellowship now, and so you have this little sense of this beautiful galaxy of people doing work, which shines really brightly. Even if they look
yeah,
like they're like
yeah,
stars, but
yeah,
and also it's the way a mycelium is, it's spread out across the space, but you know that there are connections across it. I still,
yeah,
I have a lot of faith and hope, that that's the way systems work. You connect things under the
yeah,
surface, and we don't know what will emerge from them. But there's good work happening in the nodes, and there's work happening to connect things.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. And I just want to go back to the numbers you said, because you've got, was it 200 people and you talked about 50 countries. I mean, that is an amazing thing you've done.
Yeah, I'm
So,
not sure how we've done that, to be honest. Yes,
yeah,
yeah, I did quite a bit in Brazil and for a while with a group called the Amani Institute, which is sort of a social innovation management program, and I've done a lot in the Netherlands as well. But I mean, our faculty is very international, and obviously that brings people internationally as well. But it's a joy. It's bit. One thing I'm glad about is that we've been really true to certain principles. If we really are true to some of nature's principles, that principle of diversity is so key, and we've managed to do that. And we've managed to make it accessible, so sort of to different financial positioning. So yeah, it's great. It's great.
yeah, really, really good. I mean, and I don't want us to move off this little bit of reminiscing without mentioning Chris Seeley, because I'm sure
Mm,
yeah, she was, we were AMSA 2, weren't we? Which was the first AMSA that I worked on full time. I
right.
shadowed AMSA 1, and then Chris and I worked with AMSA 2, which was the second running of the master's degree at
Mm,
Ashridge. So Chris very much led on that with me as um, kind of second fiddle. And it was I mean, I imagine just for you and Corby and others, that she's been a massive part of your life ever since. I mean, how do you remember her now?
oh well, thanks for asking that question. I don't. You can't measure it, can you? Really? And you said something to me a few weeks back when you were saying maybe she was one of the few people you'd call actually a real genius. In
Yeah, I mean, I have said that a few times. I think Chris Seeley was one of the genuine geniuses that I've worked with. I mean, lots of
right.
people have genius in certain areas, but Chris was a polymath. I mean, from
Right.
artist to clown to analyst to, you know, she could operate in so many fields and did. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing for me, I mean, I think she was the age I'm at now when she passed away.
Yes.
I was talking to Corby about that. So of
Yeah.
course it makes you think, wow, what would she have done this last 10 years? But then maybe that's a silly question to ask because she moved and shifted things inside so many people and inspired so many people and offered a way of being that felt and is so alive. What a way to meet the world. And
Yeah. Mm.
for me, that a capacity to look at someone and in such an invigorating way to speak to, like, there's that thing about you, and if you kind of just give that attention, it will help something flow. And as you say, like dancing from a PhD that knows so many things to a clown in the same instant. Absolutely remarkable. Yeah.
Mm. 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 So can I take you back then to or take you forward to what you might do next? Because you talked about deeper work or depth work. Do you have a sense of, like, if we did this conversation again in 2030,
Mm.
what you can imagine unfolding?
It's quite quite fun. It's quite a good way to do sort of some sense making and planning in the open, isn't it? I've got this thing about what is it to hold the complexity that exists in the world. Gene Bolton's another person that comes to mind because I had
Well,
a
do you
chat
know, I
with
thought
her
about
about this.
Jean when you were talking about the Taoism, because, obviously,
Yeah.
Jean's book, The Tao of Complexity, and she was on here a couple of days ago talking about it. So
Great.
I was wondering if your conversation about Taoism included Jean.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and so she came to mind because we were having a conversation about things are serious. We've known this for a long time. Things are serious, and one of the things that makes them harder is that feeling of we're going backwards sometimes, or the parts of the world are going backwards for whatever reason. I don't. I still hold a lot of light with that, and I still feel it. I think the world and life is a miracle. I think, what a blessing to be around. I think we're capable of remarkable things. I think the way the fact we can experience, just going. I'm just looking at some trees out the window, but we can go out there into the world and feel it all and still do good things is incredible, right? It's like there's no words to describe that. And so I feel like what is it to make space to feel both of those things, and and I've held this for a while, the notion that I'm not that sure that I frame what I do purely as about. We don't use the word sustainability often anyway, but let's say sustainability. I don't frame it as sustainability, or my fight isn't a fight around sustainability. It's more around consciousness.
Yes.
It's more around, and coming back to Stefan Harding, this popped into my mind. There's something he said in a session we were in with him once, which stays very deeply with me, which is in the context of, well, it's okay if humanity sort of dies away, life will carry on, which, okay, maybe it will in some forms. But he also said, what if humans are the capacity for the universe to be conscious of itself?
Mm.
Like, what if the way we can speak with each other, the language that we have formed, the way that we are able to be or reflect in certain ways, what if that's a moment where the universe can sort of see itself in a different way? Or our way of loving, our way of forming friendships, and so on, ... And however dark things might get or be already and get in coming eras, that is so beautiful, isn't it, to have as a thing to keep alive. And so in a dinky, tiny, immeasurable way, wouldn't it be neat to hold space for those two things? Of, like, it's hard, things are really hard, but how beautiful. um Either that or I don't know, maybe I'll do the postman thing as well, which sounds like quite a lot of fun.
Sorry, I couldn't hear
Yeah.
that last bit. Maybe you'll do the what? Sorry.
Oh, uh, it's another it's another story actually. But I keep saying to Jess, my wife, maybe I'll just set up a different kind of postal system as I get older. Um, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Mm, yeah. Mm. So what is it that, given that the world is quite dark at times, and the um yeah, and last week I was at the Global Tipping Points conference at Exeter University, listening to Johan Rockstrom and Tim Lenton and others with the latest research on the science of tipping points, and in particular the connections between them. And you could look at that and you could get, oh God, that really is bad news. And at the same time, Tim Lenton's new book is Positive Tipping Points. It's around the things that are actually already going the right way and how those can be amplified. And you've got Rob Hopkins' book, How to Fall in Love with the Future, which is very much about taking people on time travel journeys. He said, yeah, of course, there are loads of futures that are absolutely bloody horrible, and it's
Mm,
possible to see some really good ones, based on what's already happening. Um,
mm,
and there is something in there that, yeah, it's a complex system and we can't plan our way to a particular outcome. But having some seeds of positive news acts as stimulants in the creation of narratives by which things become possible that if we just get
yeah.
smaller and smaller and meaner, can't happen. So let's get bigger and more expansive and something might happen,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing about imagination is so important, isn't it? It makes me something different comes to mind actually related, and you're making me wonder where does it sit with what I just said about that. It felt a little grand somehow of like, right, spaces for working with depth and light and shadow, which there is another thing that's very present for me at the moment, which is what's the street level of what we're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
What is it? What is it when it's just a couple of friends in the pub chatting about it, or a family? And I'm really grateful for something which is for me, which is I was born in Colombia. My dad's from Birkenhead. We travelled around with his work. He was an engineer for Unilever. We travelled around a little with his work, and then we came back to Birkenhead in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a school that was hard in the 80s actually, at a time when obviously Thatcher was around and that region was struggling.
Yeah.
And that's I still call that, Birkenhead home. My mum and dad, are in good health. They're there. I've got a brother and sister there. And it can feel like a world away from the kind of conversation we've had up to this point. It can feel like a world away from Amster. It can feel the world away from Johan Rockstrom.
Yeah.
I'm really, something in my body wants it just to feel like in a way I just want to, like, it's all hot air unless we feel it on the street. Right.
Yeah.
And I know it isn't, but how can we make more of this feel like the reality is on the street? The reality is in people's lives and neighborhoods all around the world. And please take this as just like thinking out loud. I don't have a sort of thought, a conclusion with this, but I believe that there is so much love at the street level, and I believe that people will look after each other at the street level. So, that I think I'm finding more hope in that truth, that people will look after each other and people will do horrendous things to each other, but they will also really love each other and they will grieve for each other, and they don't need big fancy models. They don't need massive strategies. They just need basic things to be able to live, and they will love each other. And is there something in that? I don't know, but I'm called to that as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. And, and Andres, maybe that is probably a great way to end this, because I can't think of anything better we could possibly say with more hope than what you just said. Because what a great question. It makes me think of Peter Block and his work on abundant community, and at the same time, it makes me think of Ruth Bentovin and her work on Town Anywhere, working with local communities to visualize positive futures that they build, people build,
Hmm.
right? And John Alexander's work, about it can't be done for us. We have to do it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
what a great place to finish. I mean, Andres, have I stopped you from saying something that you would really love to say? Have I asked you completely the wrong questions that you go, oh, why didn't you?
Oh, Chris, no, what a joy to speak with you, to think about the people that have come up in the conversation, to feel the threads of connection across this work, and to hopefully help a few more ripples of good stuff happen. So I'm delighted, and no, there's nothing more from me. Yeah.
Okay, give me a moment. I will close off the episode for anybody listening, and then I'll come back to say another thank you. So, everybody, thank you so much for watching or listening. It's been great to have this conversation. As always, so many threads to other episodes, and I do encourage you to follow your interest across the other episodes, because so many of them are connected, as they would with mycelium Andres, who has connected to so much of this over the years. It's been a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming and talking this afternoon.
Oh, Chris, thank you. Yeah, much love.
Cheers. Bye bye.